Like,
well, you know what's going on. Someone wanted a lot of attention, and now they got it.
that was the whole episode.
That was the app.
Yeah.
That was the
They're like,
premise.
Is that what it
they're
was?
like, we want privacy, and they keep going on every magazine.
Yeah.
Be a regular person.
Yeah.
Go get a job in an office.
This is the moment many royal watchers quietly worried about for years. The point where a long-running media narrative suddenly shifts from online chatter into something much more serious in the public conversation. What once lived in gossip columns and comment sections is now being discussed in mainstream spaces with a sharper, more analytical tone. For weeks, analysts and commentators have closely examined travel movements, luggage transfers at LAX, an unexpected stopover in Sicily, and unanswered questions surrounding a reported $12 million discrepancy.
Like, damn, we did some bad stuff.
She's half black.
And then the wife convinces you to leave the royal family. Like, I'm out. I don't need you guys. Which is crazy, because don't you just get free money?
Dude,
Like,
give me my
what-
allowance.
What do you get when you're a royal?
You get a stipend.
You get a, you
What's
get a
the
bunch
stipend?
of cash.
Like,
I'm sure it's
you
a
spend
million
on
a
anything you
month.
want?
Yeah, what about the countesses?
Yeah.
Do they get?
A shadowy individual, referred to by sources only as the architect, added even more mystery. Until now, major outlets downplayed the discussion, labeling it speculation and redirecting attention toward lifestyle branding headlines and glossy distractions.
That's why a lot of these celebrities that start these things, they can't keep up. You know, like the Meghan Markles.
But you're the same.
You're the same.
Like, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
like, guys, you don't got to do this. Please, I'm begging you to stop.
The approach was simple: overwhelm the timeline until the topic faded out. But there's one force that can't be muted: massive online reach. Last night, podcaster Joe Rogan, whose audience rivals major global networks combined, addressed the LAX footage directly. He reviewed the visuals carefully, slowed them down, and discussed them from an analytical, procedural perspective, rather than a celebrity angle.
But they
wanna go,
can't
but,
make
you know.
money off the royal family.
So why did you say yes to doing this show?
Because it's you. And to me, that means
There was like photos with her and Prince Andrew way back in the day when she was like in her early 20s.
Without soft phrasing or image protection, Rogan framed the situation as something that looked highly unusual when viewed through the lens of logistics and protocol, according to his own experience. He referenced past conversations with intelligence and security experts and emphasized that the activity shown didn't resemble standard leisure travel. His tone was direct, grounded, and focused on patterns, not personalities. When Rogan speaks, online momentum moves fast.
You just can't keep faking it. It's too hard. Wasn't there some speculation that she was on Epstein's yacht at one point in time?
Within hours, clips surged past 50 million views, pushing the discussion out of niche forums and into the national spotlight. What was once whispered is now openly debated across platforms, timelines, and group chats everywhere. Reports now suggest Meghan Markle is staying abroad while reassessing next moves as online discussion intensifies. The shift in tone has clearly disrupted the carefully managed public image, turning a polished narrative into a high-pressure media moment. Rogan didn't just react, he influenced the framing.
I knew her a bit before she met Harry. She was nothing like that. She didn't speak like that. Her mannerisms weren't like that. This is all fake.
There isn't a tear in sight. It's an actor's trick.
Commentators began reevaluating earlier assumptions, swapping glossy labels for harder questions about logistics, timing, and coordination. The silence from official channels only amplified the curiosity. He reportedly hasn't rested much over the past couple of days, replaying the same clip again and again, stuck on the implications of what he's seeing. After stepping away from royal life with hopes of becoming a global thinker and cultural voice, the reality unfolding online appears far different. Instead, one of the most influential media figures of this era is publicly analyzing footage connected to his household, moment by moment in real time.
At Soho House, Toronto, which is basically TIG headquarters for me. I write my stories here, I take my meetings here, and it's kind of amazing because all over the world, if I'm traveling, Soho House can still be home base.
Now make yourself try. Oh, I can do that so well. Oh my God, it's crazy. You're like, Meghan, one tear, left eye, go. Give me 3.
During the discussion, Joe Rogan highlighted a detail many viewers initially overlooked. He focused on the individuals handling the luggage, slowing the footage down and pointing out physical strain and movement patterns. Rogan questioned whether the weight and handling matched ordinary travel items, framing it as an observation rather than a conclusion. His commentary leaned heavily on logistics and visual cues, not personal judgments. Then came the moment that truly grabbed attention. A trained canine paused and signaled during the footage, an action Rogan described as noteworthy based on common security procedures.
Nobody talks like that, and nobody acts like that, because that's weird behavior that we're seeing from both of these people if we're supposed to be thinking under the impression that they're being authentic.
That visual alone shifted the tone of the conversation across social media. Rogan remarked that the situation no longer felt random, a comment that quickly echoed across platforms. According to online discussion, that remark hit especially hard. It reportedly intensified lingering doubts sparked earlier by private research and background materials circulating online. In that moment, some commentators believe a realization set in, that public roles, visibility, and appearances may have functioned as distractions while other elements operated quietly behind the scenes. Rogan didn't stop at the luggage analysis. He turned his attention to coordination and planning. He raised a question commonly asked in structured operations: who was overseeing the movement? Rogan pointed out a woman holding a clipboard, suggesting that such precision typically involves experienced logistical oversight. He emphasized that this was about organization, not identity or intent. As the episode continued, long-discussed connections, including hospitality networks, offshore business structures, and historical travel associations, were laid out in a single narrative on one of the world's largest platforms. For the first time, topics previously scattered across forums were presented together in one place. The response was immediate. Viewership surged, discussions spiked, and public interest intensified. Reports indicate that official agencies received an influx of public inquiries following the episode, underscoring just how wide the conversation had spread. Public attention is no longer limited to small online circles. The discussion has grown louder, more persistent, and impossible to ignore. Joe Rogan didn't just offer commentary, he openly questioned whether established systems apply evenly when public figures are involved. He framed it as a broader concern about consistency and transparency, suggesting that similar situations involving everyday individuals would likely receive faster scrutiny. His remarks signaled a turning point in how the situation is being perceived. At that moment, the long-standing fairy tale narrative appeared to shift. What once felt like a modern romance story has, in the eyes of many viewers, transformed into a complex real-world case study unfolding in real time. The tone changed almost overnight. Sympathy gave way to curiosity, and curiosity turned into expectation as audiences began watching closely for official responses rather than emotional outcomes. Online observers now track every adjustment, removed posts, revised statements, and carefully worded clarifications. Each small change is being archived, reviewed, and discussed, reinforcing the idea that digital records rarely vanish completely. Staying attentive has become central to how this story continues to evolve. Rogan was careful with his language, emphasizing process rather than accusation. He referenced financial regulations in a general, educational context, explaining how large transactions are often divided into smaller segments for logistical reasons. His explanation focused on theory and historical examples rather than specific individuals. He described how complex financial movement typically involves layered transfers, intermediary entities, and professional coordination. Rogan noted that the individual seen managing logistics in the footage appeared experienced, stressing that such roles are common in high-level operations and not inherently suspicious. This framing marked the moment when public discussion clearly moved away from celebrity branding and into procedural analysis. The focus shifted from personalities to patterns, from image to structure. Regardless of outcome, the narrative has undeniably entered a new phase, one defined by scrutiny, documentation, and sustained attention. Rogan then shifted focus to a different area that had largely flown under the radar: recurring consulting payments connected to Sussex-linked organizations. He raised a question that many casual observers hadn't considered before. Who exactly are these consultants, and what services are they providing? He pointed out publicly available filings showing a California-based nonprofit issuing monthly payments to a branding firm registered in Delaware, a detail that quickly caught online attention. That single question sparked a wave of independent analysis. Across social platforms, financially minded viewers began reviewing public records, highlighting business entities registered in low-visibility states such as Delaware and Wyoming. These entities, according to public databases, appeared to have minimal digital presence, no public-facing staff, no websites, and no physical offices listed. Rogan emphasized that such structures are not illegal by default, but they are commonly used for privacy, asset management, and administrative separation. His focus stayed on transparency and pattern recognition, not accusations. Still, the visual simplicity of these paper-only entities fueled intense online curiosity. He then redirected attention back to the footage, focusing on the woman previously discussed as a key logistical figure. Rogan paused the clip and commented on her calm demeanor. She didn't appear rushed or stressed, instead moving with routine confidence, as if handling a familiar task. To Rogan, that suggested planning rather than improvisation. He described the situation not as disorder, but as a highly coordinated departure, structured, deliberate, and managed by experienced hands. Rogan connected this level of organization to long-discussed hospitality and networking circles, often referenced in public business commentary. He framed it as an example of how established systems, not individuals, often drive complex logistics. Rogan pushed back on the idea that this level of financial and organizational complexity is typically handled alone. He suggested that many public figures rely on advisors, frameworks, and pre-built strategies when navigating international branding, finance, and mobility. In his view, what viewers were seeing reflected institutional know-how rather than spontaneous decision-making. Rogan suggested that the overall structure may have existed long before recent events, pointing out that complex financial and organizational frameworks are often established years in advance. From his perspective, once the move to California happened, systems already appeared to be in place to manage branding, finances, and long-term flexibility. For someone observing this narrative unfold privately, that realization could feel deeply unsettling. Online commentators have noted that earlier meetings and planning sessions now look different in hindsight. Discussions once framed as routine financial optimization and strategic advice are being reinterpreted by some viewers as something far more layered. Documents that were signed during busy periods, possibly without deep review, are now being described online as part of broader administrative planning rather than simple tax preparation. In this retelling, the idea isn't secrecy, it's structure. Commentators emphasize that many high-profile households rely on experts to streamline operations, protect privacy, and manage complexity. Still, the sudden clarity around how interconnected these systems may be has fueled intense speculation and emotional reactions across social platforms. As the night wears on in this narrative, attention shifts to internal records and personal archives. Files once thought to be comprehensive appear sparse or outdated, reinforcing the sense that digital systems have largely replaced paper documentation. This absence has become a focal point in online discussions, with viewers noting how modern record-keeping can feel invisible until access changes. When remaining digital accounts are reviewed, a sequence of vendor payments becomes visible. Dates, amounts, and company names scroll by, firms registered in various jurisdictions, each with professional-sounding titles. To outside observers, the names offer little context, but the figures themselves command attention. Analysts online stress that such entries don't automatically signal wrongdoing. Large organizations frequently use layered vendors for branding, consulting, and operational services. Still, the cumulative totals have sparked renewed interest, prompting deeper dives into public records and financial filings. According to the narrative being discussed online, a final phone call becomes a turning point. In a moment of urgency, he reaches out to a former Paulus financial advisor, someone dismissed years earlier after raising early concerns. The call rings longer than expected before a distant, measured voice finally answers. Only one question is asked, quiet but direct. What does structuring actually mean? The pause on the line feels heavy. When the answer comes, it's careful, technical, and stripped of emotion. The explanation frames structuring as a regulated financial concept that can create serious exposure when signatures are involved. The emphasis isn't blame, it's responsibility. The message is clear: involvement can be interpreted broadly, even without intent. That realization lands hard. In this interpretation, the concern isn't just financial loss, it's accountability. Online commentators describe this moment as the point where options narrowed dramatically. Speaking openly could invite scrutiny, while staying silent could leave unanswered questions. It becomes a textbook dilemma where every path feels risky. On the podcast, Rogan's guest, described as a former financial compliance specialist, explained the situation in technical terms. He outlined how layered jurisdictions can complicate oversight, especially when funds move through multiple states or international regions. Delaware was mentioned as an example of how business structures are sometimes used to manage privacy and administrative separation. The discussion then returned to the luggage seen in earlier footage. Rogan questioned why physical assets might be involved at all, suggesting that tangible forms can feel harder to trace than digital records. He framed this as a theoretical explanation rather than a claim, noting that digital transactions leave clearer documentation over time. He added that large financial systems rarely rely on a single method. According to this analysis, physical reserves may exist alongside digital transfers, which are often divided, categorized, and processed as routine operational expenses. The focus stayed on structure, not intent. Rogan stressed that high-profile reviews don't center on titles or public images. Instead, they focus on documentation, authorization, and recorded approvals. In his view, scrutiny follows paperwork, not status. As online attention grows, the atmosphere surrounding Montecito feels increasingly intense. Commentators describe a scenario where one individual feels caught between personal trust and institutional systems that operate by strict rules. Whether the interpretations hold or fade, the pressure point is clear. Modern financial frameworks leave little room for misunderstanding once signatures are involved. Rogan suggested that the individual coordinating the logistics appeared to execute the situation with remarkable precision, but he also noted what he viewed as a single oversight. Allowing a trained canine unit near the luggage, he argued, created a moment that would later fuel public curiosity. From that point forward, questions multiplied, timelines were scrutinized, and the event itself shifted into a widely discussed media moment. As the podcast moved deeper into its third hour, the conversation took a more serious analytical turn. After reviewing financial structures, business entities, and transportation details, Rogan paused and reframed the discussion entirely. He emphasized that visibility matters when reviewing public footage, what appears clearly and what does not. He revisited the flight manifests, replayed airport clips, and walked viewers through the sequence frame by frame. The luggage was visible, the primary figures were visible, the support personnel were visible. Rogan pointed out that in tightly coordinated travel situations, additional logistical indicators are often present, and their absence can raise procedural questions. Rogan was careful to stress boundaries. He stated clearly that missing elements in footage do not prove intent, wrongdoing, or concealment. Instead, he framed his remarks as observational analysis based solely on what was publicly shown. He repeated that limited footage naturally leads to incomplete conclusions. Still, the discussion marked a shift in tone. Listeners noted that the focus moved away from personal relationships and online rumors and toward transparency, documentation, and jurisdictional clarity. The emphasis was no longer on emotional narratives, but on how international travel, financial systems, and public visibility intersect. The studio atmosphere reportedly changed as Rogan slowed the conversation and chose his words carefully. He reminded listeners that absence in footage does not equal absence in reality, and that speculation should never replace verified information. Even so, the moment resonated strongly online. Viewers described it as the point where curiosity intensified and the conversation matured into something more procedural and measured. The story, once framed through celebrity culture, now exists in a space defined by observation, caution, and unanswered logistical questions. Online discussion surged rapidly, but the central demand wasn't outrage, it was clarity. Viewers across platforms called for straightforward explanations, emphasizing transparency over speculation. The conversation shifted away from emotional reaction and toward unanswered procedural questions that many felt had been left hanging. Then Rogan turned his attention to the broader legal landscape surrounding international movement and jurisdiction. Using a simplified map, he explained how different regions operate under distinct legal frameworks, even when international agreements exist. His focus stayed firmly on process, not personal outcomes. He stressed that once cross-border legal systems become involved, resolution often slows dramatically. Timelines stretch, coordination becomes complex, and uncertainty increases. Rogan framed this not as a claim, but as a cautionary example of how international structures can complicate even routine matters. At this stage, the discussion fully exited celebrity culture. The emphasis moved toward responsibility, documentation, and the consequences of silence in high-profile situations. Rogan warned that when official communication pauses, public interpretation tends to rush in to fill the gaps. He also examined why certain global locations are frequently chosen by public figures and organizations. According to his analysis, these regions offer predictable regulatory environments and administrative stability, making them attractive for long-term planning. Rogan framed this as strategic positioning rather than personal motivation. This perspective aligned with what some analysts describe as a chessboard approach to decision-making, where moves are calculated, structured, and driven by leverage rather than emotion. In that framework, visibility, timing, and jurisdiction matter more than optics. Rogan pointed out that limited public visibility naturally fuels curiosity, even when privacy is intentional. He emphasized that absence of information should never be confused with wrongdoing, but acknowledged that prolonged silence can raise procedural questions. As dawn approaches in Montecito, the narrative takes on a quieter tone. Inside the residence, movement slows, conversations pause, and the atmosphere is described as restrained and reflective. Staff members remain professional and reserved, maintaining routine without commentary. He opens one of the private rooms in the house, expecting familiarity, but what he finds stops him cold. The space is immaculate, almost too immaculate. Furniture is perfectly aligned, personal items arranged with showroom-level precision, surfaces untouched by daily life. Instead of feeling lived in, the room feels preserved, like a carefully prepared set. He moves to the storage area and checks what's inside. Everything is neatly organized, clothing hung evenly, shelves balanced, but when he reaches out, another detail stands out. Many items appear unused, still carrying signs of recent purchase rather than everyday wear. The realization hits not as proof of anything, but as a deeply unsettling emotional moment. The silence inside the room feels heavy, not calm, not restful, just empty. Assumptions he once held quietly begin to unravel. Routines he believed were happening regularly now feel distant and indistinct. The memory of household staff he trusted shifts in his mind, no longer just support figures, but intermediaries who manage access and information. As he looks deeper, inconsistencies emerge. Logs aren't where he expects them to be. Certain documents are missing. Travel records and identification materials that should be easily accessible aren't found in their usual places. He pauses in the center of the room, holding an item that still feels new, unused, untouched by time. The weight of the moment isn't about loss, it's about distance and disconnection. The realization settles in slowly. It's not that moments didn't happen, it's that he can no longer clearly place them. The timeline feels fragmented, blurred by delegation and trust. On the podcast, Rogan then redirected the discussion toward extended household connections. He raised a question about a close family associate, framing it carefully as a logistical inquiry rather than an accusation. His emphasis stayed on understanding roles, not assigning blame. Rogan suggested that while one person may appear to guide strategy publicly, another individual could be handling behind-the-scenes coordination. He stressed the importance of clarity, not speculation, urging attention to publicly verifiable information only. According to publicly available details discussed during the episode, that individual had maintained a low public profile in recent days. Observers noted limited visible activity at a known residence, though Rogan emphasized that absence alone proves nothing. Rogan referenced publicly available flight data showing a private charter departing from Van Nuys several days earlier, with Istanbul listed as the destination, a well-known international transit hub. He immediately clarified that this was theory, not confirmation, but then carefully outlined a possible framework for how such movement could be organized. According to his explanation, complex exits are often divided by function. One party manages financial coordination, while another handles personal or logistical matters. Rogan compared it to high-level risk management, where critical components are intentionally kept separate. If one pathway encounters complications, the other remains operational. In his words, that's contingency planning, deliberate, controlled, and anything but random. What unsettled listeners wasn't certainty, it was the sophistication implied if even part of the theory held weight. Rogan emphasized repeatedly that no claims were being made as fact. Still, the structure he described mirrored documented strategies used in corporate crisis planning and asset protection scenarios. He framed the situation not as a quiet departure, but as a coordinated, high-level exit plan that followed recognizable professional patterns. Again, this was analysis, not accusation, but the level of organization alone raised eyebrows across the internet. In the closing moments of the discussion, Rogan shifted tone and addressed the situation more broadly. Looking directly into the camera, he delivered a message aimed at institutional leadership rather than individuals. He spoke about visibility, responsibility, and the growing need for clear communication when financial questions are circulating publicly. He stressed that silence allows speculation to grow, while transparency has the power to stabilize narratives. His point wasn't confrontation, it was urgency. When complex systems, international movement, and unanswered questions collide, clarity becomes essential. Rogan emphasized that the United Kingdom maintains highly advanced intelligence and security capabilities, then posed a blunt but theoretical question. Would institutional leadership step in decisively or allow the situation to drift further into uncertainty? He framed it as a strategic pressure point, not a warning or demand. In his view, this was about leverage, timing, and positioning, not disappearance. Rogan suggested that Meghan wasn't vanishing from view, but repositioning within a larger framework, not moving impulsively, but waiting for legal engagement, formal dialogue, and structured negotiation to begin. According to his interpretation, the goal wasn't avoidance, it was leverage. He described it as a waiting game, one shaped by counsel, process, and calculated restraint. He stressed that if negotiations were to occur, the cost wouldn't be limited to finances alone. Reputation, institutional relationships, and long-term positioning would all factor into the equation. This, Rogan argued, is how high-level negotiations typically unfold, quietly, slowly, and under significant pressure. As daylight breaks in California, the house remains still. The silence lingers, heavy and unresolved. According to the narrative laid out on the show, a decision point arrives, one that could permanently alter an already strained relationship with the institution left behind years earlier. Rogan suggested that at this stage, uncertainty outweighs confidence. Not knowing rather than knowing becomes the driving force. In this interpretation, the call that follows isn't made from strength, it's made from concern, not certainty, but fear that the situation has grown beyond personal control. According to the account discussed on the podcast, a rarely used diplomatic communication channel is activated, one reserved for moments considered highly sensitive. When the call is answered, Rogan speculated that the voice on the other end doesn't sound like someone delivering demands, but like someone seeking guidance. The moment is framed not as confrontation, but as acknowledgement, a recognition that the narrative has shifted, the stakes have risen, and clarity is now more important than pride. According to the account discussed on the podcast, the voice on the line sounded shaken and overwhelmed. Rogan suggested the admission that followed wasn't about certainty, it was about loss of control and confusion. He described a moment where trust, finances, and positioning all appeared to collapse at once, leaving nothing solid to hold on to. For years, public observers expected any response from the institution to come through formal statements or deliberate silence. Rogan argued that this time looked different. No press messaging, no public rebuttal. Instead, what he described was internal movement, quiet, fast, and highly coordinated. Rogan claimed long-standing palace protocols centered on restraint were temporarily set aside, not for public relations, but for operational clarity. According to his interpretation, experienced crisis managers weren't just briefed, they were deployed. The focus wasn't optics, it was understanding systems, timelines, and exposure. Earlier in the episode, Rogan warned that when private matters intersect with institutional stability, responses shift dramatically. In his view, this wasn't about personal relationships or reputation management anymore. It entered territory the institution treats as foundational, something that demands preservation over appearance. Rogan suggested that senior leadership may have authorized the use of private analytical channels to operate alongside but separate from standard bureaucratic pathways. He framed this not as retaliation, but as assessment. The goal, he argued, would be clarity, mapping what happened, where vulnerabilities exist, and how to respond without public escalation. He emphasized that the institution operates on long timelines. It absorbs criticism. It lets narratives breathe. It waits. According to Rogan, silence has never meant inaction. It signals patience and preparation. He also claimed that financial patterns connected to the situation may have already been under quiet review long before public attention surged. Rogan stressed this was interpretation, not confirmation, but if accurate, it reframes the entire timeline. At this stage, the situation may be entering its most tightly managed phase yet. According to an insider account discussed on online commentary, certain financial movements may have been quietly observed for some time. Business entities were forming, transfers were occurring, and yet no visible action appeared to take place. Not because of inattention, but because, according to this interpretation, of strategy. The reasoning, as framed by analysts, was procedural rather than emotional. Early intervention could have been portrayed as interference or control, potentially reinforcing narratives of overreach. By allowing events to unfold fully, responsibility would remain clearly with those making the decisions and authorizing the movements. In this framework, restraint wasn't absence, it was positioning. That's the pivot point in this version of events. The role of King Charles shifts from distant observer to stabilizing force. Silence is reframed not as hesitation, but patience, a deliberate long-term approach designed to preserve legitimacy and clarity. According to this theory, timing mattered more than speed. Only once actions were completed could institutional response occur without appearing manipulative or reactive. Whether accurate or not, this interpretation has gained traction because it aligns with how large organizations often manage complex internal matters. Back in California, the morning unfolds quietly in Montecito. The gates open, but not to media or public attention. Instead, a small convoy of official vehicles enters the property. No cameras, no spectacle, just controlled movement. Several individuals step out, dressed formally and carrying briefcases. They aren't personal lawyers or public representatives. In this narrative, they are described as institutional envoys, professionals tasked with assessment, coordination, and oversight. Harry meets them at the entrance. He appears exhausted, visibly weighed down by the events of the previous hours. There's no ceremony, no dramatic exchange. One representative hands over a document and speaks plainly, outlining that structured assistance and oversight are being put in place. Panic fades fast, replaced with precision. The team moves calmly, efficiently, and without raised voices. Devices are cataloged, digital systems are logged, storage media is carefully preserved. Nothing about the process feels rushed or chaotic. It's structured, procedural, and clearly rehearsed. Harry sits silently as unfamiliar professionals move through the space, methodically documenting what once felt like an independent life. In that moment, a realization lands hard. The call he made wasn't just asking for support, it was a handover. The autonomy he fought for has shifted back under institutional protection and authority, according to the narrative circulating online. Commentators suggest that this transition marks a turning point. Independence gives way to oversight. Informality gives way to structure. The environment changes, not emotionally, but operationally, clean, calm, and controlled. According to discussions referenced online, a detailed informational package may have been shared with U.S. agencies. The material is said to outline consulting relationships, travel documentation, and internal correspondence connected to financial administration. This is framed as cooperation, not confrontation, a transfer of clarity rather than pressure. The theory suggests that layered corporate structures and encrypted platforms were believed to provide insulation. However, analysts note that advanced intelligence capabilities operate well beyond standard commercial safeguards. Registration in low-visibility states or reliance on digital privacy tools doesn't necessarily limit institutional visibility. The implication is significant, though still theoretical. In this framing, one side focuses on financial process and accountability, while the other manages internal stabilization and support. It's a division of responsibility, not conflict, a systems-based response rather than an emotional one. If accurate, that kind of dual-track attention creates real pressure. When multiple institutions begin asking procedural questions at the same time, alliances shift quickly. Even well-connected networks tend to pause when oversight expands across borders. At this stage, the narrative being discussed online has clearly moved beyond image or reputation. The focus is now on jurisdiction, authority, and what happens when private choices intersect with public responsibility. According to this interpretation, the individuals who arrived in Montecito weren't there to offer reassurance or restoration, they were there to initiate transition.
The lead representative is described as calm and direct. Instructions are brief and procedural. A request is made to prepare essential belongings with immediate travel arrangements already in place. There's no debate, no delay, just forward motion. Harry looks around the now quiet residence. The stillness feels heavy, layered with finality. He asks about the future of the property. The response is measured and impersonal. The residence will be handled through formal administrative processes, and his chapter there has effectively closed. This isn't portrayed as a triumph or return to favor. It's a recall, structured, controlled, and unavoidable. Harry understands what this means. He isn't being welcomed back as a symbol of success. He's being brought back under oversight, protection, and limitation. Supported, yes, but also managed. As preparations continue, the weight of the moment settles in. The identity he tried to build outside the institution now feels distant, almost unreal. What once looked like freedom is reframed as isolation, and structure now appears as the only viable path forward. The convoy departs quietly. No spectacle, no announcement, just movement. As he looks back one final time at the place meant to represent independence, the realization sharpens. The escape didn't lead away from the institution, it looped back into it. In this telling, the call was answered, the system responded, and a reset is underway. Not driven by punishment or emotion, but by authority, continuity, and control. According to the interpretation discussed online, the situation doesn't unfold in a California courtroom or behind palace walls in London. Instead, attention shifts to a modern office tower in Dubai, quiet, controlled, and deliberately out of the public eye. No cameras, no press, just closed doors, climate-controlled rooms, and carefully managed conversations. Roughly 2 days after Harry's return to institutional oversight, analysts suggest a separate diplomatic engagement may have taken place in the UAE. The description emphasizes discretion rather than confrontation. No spectacle, no raised voices, simply formal dialogue supported by documentation rather than pressure.
Commentators believe the discussion centered on jurisdiction, regulatory cooperation, and financial clarity. Questions around privileges, protections, and how international frameworks intersect were reportedly addressed calmly and efficiently. The meeting itself, according to this narrative, was brief, focused more on alignment than negotiation. Rogan suggested that informational materials previously reviewed by U.S. agencies may have also been shared with regional authorities. In this framing, the message wasn't coercive, it was practical. Governments prioritize stability, predictability, and trusted financial relationships. When uncertainty arises, alignment tends to follow institutional interests rather than personalities. Observers online noted that shortly afterward, administrative actions appeared to take place. Accounts were reportedly put under review, certain intermediaries became less visible, and public-facing momentum slowed. Rogan framed this not as punishment, but as recalibration, a system correcting itself once oversight expands. Footage captured outside one location showed a noticeable change in tone. No gestures to cameras, no engagement with bystanders, just quiet movement and reserved demeanor, details that fueled interpretation, not conclusions. To provide context, Rogan referenced historical examples, noting that institutions with long histories often rely on established playbooks. When perceived instability emerges, the response is containment, distance, and reduced visibility, not drama or retaliation. He described the strategy as controlled disengagement, not emotional, not reactive, just methodical repositioning designed to minimize disruption and preserve long-term balance. In this narrative, expectations shift. Ambitions tied to global visibility give way to a quieter presence. Access narrows, platforms diminish, media opportunities slow. What remains is a contained, carefully managed profile, far from major influence centers, but still functional. The story, as framed here, isn't about victory or defeat. It's about limits, about how large systems respond when leverage changes hands. When institutions decide boundaries have been reached, the response isn't debate, it's adjustment. One last look at Palm Jumeirah as the sun lowers over the Persian Gulf. From the outside, everything looks flawless. Glass, water, symmetry. Inside the villa, though, the atmosphere feels heavy, compressed, unusually still. The silence isn't calming, it's uncomfortable. Inside, Meghan is alone. The security presence that once surrounded her arrival is gone. Their role was contractual, and that chapter has ended. She reaches for her phone, scrolling through contacts that once responded instantly. Calls to agencies go unanswered. Messages sit unread. Streaming partners don't return enquiries. Business conversations stall mid-sentence. When she checks financial access, restrictions appear. Reviews pending. Activity paused. Momentum that once felt unstoppable is suddenly gone. She looks into the mirror and rehearses the familiar expression. Composed, empathetic, camera ready. The look that once landed every time now feels disconnected. There's no audience in the room, no lens, no echo. The realization settles in slowly. The system that amplified everything is no longer active. Without institutional alignment, the machinery stops moving. What remains is space, silence, and the weight of diminished reach.
The quiet inside the villa isn't peace, it's distance. Attention has shifted elsewhere. Influence has narrowed. Visibility has faded. What once felt like control now feels like isolation. Meanwhile, parallel processes discussed by analysts appear to move toward resolution behind closed doors. According to public interpretation, institutional mechanisms prioritize stabilization over spectacle, not confrontation, closure, not escalation, containment. Harry, according to the narrative discussed online, is now removed from public circulation and operating within a structured, protected environment. No interviews, no appearances, no public timeline, just distance, privacy, and recalibration. The broader situation appears to be settling into its final configuration. High visibility gives way to managed presence. Influence is replaced by limitation. Access becomes selective. The spotlight moves on. As for the unresolved financial elements, analysts suggest those matters will follow slow, methodical administrative paths, reviews, audits, and procedural follow-ups, handled quietly, without public theater. That process doesn't move fast, and it rarely makes headlines. And so, the story closes not with a dramatic finale, but with stillness. No applause, no announcement, just systems resetting and attention drifting elsewhere. The experiment ends the way institutions prefer, not loudly, not emotionally, but quietly. The lights dim, the stage clears, the audience moves on. If this breakdown made you see the situation differently, drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more deep dives like this, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who follows these stories closely. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.